Hello, everybody. Jennifer Bleam, Cybersecurity Sherpa here. You guys are in for such a cool conversation. We were backstage just a few minutes ago. This is going to be the hardest part. I've got to introduce these guys. So I'm going to start with the easier name first because I'm a wimp. Mike Hauser is here. And then we have, hold on, I got it right once already, Tom Wierzbowski.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. And on a Friday, no less. So,
yes.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for chatting with us. We are going to talk about all things related to business insurance, cyber liability insurance, E&O, which, man, if you had told me that was going to be a hot topic 4 years ago, I would have told you you were crazy, but it is something that is coming up at almost every event. It is a cause for concern inside of MSPs, and we're going to talk about this whole topic, do a pretty deep dive over the next 45 minutes. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. We're excited.
All right, so Tom, I want to start with your background because you've been in this industry for quite a few years, specifically the insurance industry, correct?
Yeah, I was a malpractice E&O professional liability broker for the last 20 years. And back in 2009, I met a colleague, peer, friend by the name of Art Gross. And he had a company called HIPAA Secure Now and started beating this drum about the HIPAA security rule of 2009 about docs getting EMRs and everything had to be protected. We were moving away from those paper files and going electronically. So as he was talking to me or preaching or banging that drum, I said, hey, if I insure 3,000 doctors, there's got to be something I have to protect them with if everything's going electronically. So really took the time to take a deep dive and understand cyber insurance, right? And how it was affecting my providers at that time. And I will tell you, we put a program around HIPAA Secure Now and sort of looked at different markets for our physicians at the time back in 2009, and we haven't looked back. And really over the years, we've sort of, again, Willow Risk Advisors is the professional lines agency, and Inksyber is a part that concentrates on the MSPs and their clients. But really, of those years from 2009 to the present, we've watched professional lines, cyber, and E&O really expand and with technology in the market. And I think COVID really accelerated the cyber market. We all saw it. We started in Inksyber probably prior to COVID because we saw the writing on the wall coming on how the cyber market was starting to take on a little bit more claims. And I think you and I talked backstage of, hey, we used to answer 2 questions and get a cyber insurance, right? Quote. And it was easy. And we sort of, the insurance company said, hey, we'll just write more premium, we'll cover any claims. But really started to deteriorate a little bit prior to COVID. And really COVID accelerated what happened because everyone became digitized, whether they were ready or not, no matter what industry you're in. And that's when you had those people that weren't necessarily ready to work from home, went home. And that's when we start seeing the social engineering claims, the phishing claims really explode. And it's been an interesting ride over the last 2 years for us on watching this market deteriorate. Carriers jumping out of the market saying, hey, we're not going to write this anymore. And then some carriers trying to integrate technology. So it's been fun. So we've been doing it a long time. Mike came on to us about 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And his background sort of was always in that sales aspect of piece, but really took the time and invested a lot of time understanding this market. So it's been great for both of us.
Okay, so obviously one of the things that is driving such a dramatic change in a relatively short amount of time is the reality that insurance carriers don't lose money, or at least they don't like to lose money. And so that's where the concept of like the actuarials come from, or the bean counters, or like they are trying to anticipate what claims are we going to see, and therefore within this bucket of clients or this particular book of business, we have to make at least that much money. And so as the spend out or the claims were coming in and the insurance carriers weren't able to weasel out of paying those claims, their liability increased, and they don't absorb that. They pass that on to clients. And so they pass that on to the MSPs. And because the insurance carriers they're a company as well. They have profits to think about. They have shareholders that they answer to. And so we now have this increased liability for the MSPs. So tell me how you first started seeing this happen and kind of where we are today.
And I'm going to let Mike talk for a second, but first, you made an interesting comment in the beginning. Insurance carriers are great carriers, right? They're sort of there to transfer our risk, right? That's the true definition of insurance. But when we look at this, insurance carriers have to be profitable, right? So I'm going to give you a term called combined ratio. So when you started to explain what a combined ratio is, but really it's for every dollar premium coming into an insurance carrier, how much is going out. So during COVID, we started to see that combined ratio go over 100, right? Mm-hmm. Usually insurance carriers will work under or aim to get under 100, right? Because there's that little bit of expense load, the claims load, and that profitability is very slim, so they want to operate under 100 for that. So that's what happened, is the combined ratio is going up, and they have to bring that down, right? They have to be profitable. So we start seeing those increases, but those increases weren't subtle increases, right? Those increases were double, triple, some cases quadruple of what you were paying. So the market for us has really turned from a premium standpoint. But that isn't the only thing to happen. The other case is controls, right?
Yeah, and then also I wanted to touch upon, I prior to coming to work here, I would hear Tom say, oh, $1,000 would get you $1 million policy as an MSP back in the day, and it's like, so like you were saying, during COVID, there was a spike in actual claims, and obviously the cost is going to be passed along to the MSPs, via their premium. And I have noticed there had been an increase in premiums, an increase of controls that have to take place for the MSPs, and basically, so I wanted to just I'm getting kind of lost in my thoughts here. So
you need to keep $1 million when you a premium, $1,000 a premium wouldn't be able to catch up if you double that. When we talk about controls, if you said, hey, I have a firewall, right? I am doing endpoint detection. I'm doing all this. So it didn't come down to just premium. It went from premium and controls. So now you used to hit yes, yes, yes. And that was great. You answered 4 questions. Now we're looking at applications, and I wish I could sort of show you, and I can send you to put on your website an application from 6 months ago to an application today, right? Because it's more specific. Are you using MFA? What are you using? It's sort of almost making the carriers making you sign off and warrant what you were doing, where they have to get control of what's happening with these social engineering claims, these extortion claims, these phishing claims. So it isn't just a catch up of premium anymore, and that's still happening, but it's a catch up. What are you doing to protect? And in some cases, I have a practice or a client in New Mexico that we couldn't provide insurance coverage because they wouldn't turn on MFA for all aspects. It's not just, hey, I have MFA on, but it's, hey, I turn MFA on for email. But what else are you turning it on for is when you're accessing the network. So the controls are really cracking down. And now, if you don't have certain controls, we can't get you coverage.
So you used a phrase that my ears perked up to, which was transferring risk. And it was in the context of the insurance carriers transferring their risk to the MSPs or the business owners, whoever was purchasing the insurance. That is interesting to me because when we're selling cybersecurity, we talk about transferring the risk, or at least sharing the risk between the MSP and the end user client. And so there has to be an understanding that what we're doing is mitigating risk with cybersecurity controls that we're putting in place. We're never eliminating that risk altogether. This is not like bulletproof security. But when I think about transferring risk, one of the things that I'm always concerned about is that MSPs are sometimes transferring the risk to themselves when they're filling out these checklists, where they're filling out the paperwork, whatever it's called. You can help me with that. Yes, thank you, the application. And I think there's 2 areas of risk. One is filling it out as honestly as you can, but maybe there's pieces missing and you didn't realize it because they're not a client. And then the other risk I want to talk about in a few minutes is the risk of them becoming an insurance carrier. And so I want to talk about both of those things. So let's talk first, like from a technology standpoint. The MSP is sitting down, perhaps they've met a brand new prospect at a networking meeting, and the prospect mentions, hey, I've got this renewal coming up and I just got this 7-page document. I mean, I don't think I should just click yes, 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 all the way down, but I'm not a technology guy. And the MSP says, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to create a relationship, add value to the world of this end user. Let me sit down and help you for a couple of hours, fill out this checklist. Where does your advice land? Should they do that? Should they cautiously do that? Should they run from that opportunity?
I don't think you should run from the opportunity. I think you're creating an opportunity, but you want to protect yourself. So we talk about insurance. Insurance is the backstop, right? You're trying to do all these other things to mitigate your risk. Rather, the MSP, just like me as an insurance broker, I got to recommend things to protect your business or an MSP business, right? And a lot of stuff that we have to worry about, and also an MSP should worry about, assume. Don't ever let your client assume, oh, that was just taken care of because Rick's taking care of that. So we talk about, one, with the application, when we help a provider, a client in professional liability, of whether it's cyber insurance or E&O insurance, when we pre-fill that application, we're going through that with them. But be very cautious of how that is done. If a client sends an MSP over an application just to complete, hey, do we have that? They're sort of taking that exposure on a little bit themselves, and they're going to get that finger point and say, because anyone can sue for anyone. It's never my fault. That's today's society, right? It's not my fault anymore. So be very aware of saying, hey, Rick, I'm going to fill this out for you on what we've installed and done in your program, right? Other things we can go through, they're asking, again, it's very interesting now, and it's a great market for an MSP if it's done correctly. Because cyber insurance really now is selling cybersecurity, right? And a good friend of mine says that all the time. And it's true, because now you're putting these certain controls and they have to justify the client saying, hey, I'm not putting that in. That's too expensive. I'm not doing that it's adding to my per seat. I don't want to do that. So when I fill out applications with my clients, or they give you a section to complete, I always send back the application. John, please review, change where necessary, call me with any questions, as sort of putting everything in writing. Hey, I completed what we put in place for you. These other questions, I can go through with you in person, on the phone, through a Zoom or Teams. But again, you're sort of building your case, because when you write an insurance policy, that insurance carrier, you're giving up rights of subrogation. So if your client has a breach and said, hey, Joe filled that out for me, right? They're going to find out forensically, one, if you installed everything you did install, but two, they're going to look to say, well, you checked yes on this, so now we're not covering this, right? Or you didn't know. So I would be very careful in checking the questions that apply onto the work that you have done, and then writing back. If it was just one of those email things that's not face-to-face, of writing back, I have completed the questions on the work we've installed and put together, and you run through your company. I can go through the rest with you, but there's certain things you need to prove. You have to build your case, right? And I always say paper wall. Your MSA starts your paper wall. Am I going off on a tangent there?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So
I thought you were going to park on MSAs for a second. That's why I was
I'll get that. But again, that MSA starts. I'm a big believer, because today, and I said it before, is no one wants to take responsibility, and we're looked at as professionals. So you always have to, with your MSA, with your contract with that particular client, of really specifying what you're installing. And I talked to you earlier backstage, a great example, and I don't like to bring it up, is like car salesman, right? You buy a car, and I call it the chicken letter, and that's a very rudimentary term, right? Of, hey, do you want the hail damage, the wheel damage? Oh, I don't want that, I don't need that. They make you sign off on it. So when you write your MSA or you're doing specific contract work, hey, I don't want EDR. right, then sign here. Right, because that's protecting you. Me as an insurance broker, if I don't recommend a coverage to you and we just had a conversation like, Tom, I don't want that. How quickly, if a claim happens, that you're going to forget that you told me that you didn't want that. I'll remember it, but again, it's signing off on all those pieces. So again, that's a way of transferring the risk back to the client, but also is making them think, hey, if they're making me sign off on this, this is kind of important.
Okay. All right. So we've talked a fair amount about the MSPs getting insurance for themselves, not insuring themselves, but making sure their business insurance is in place. As far as their clients, though, are they bringing those clients to you? Are they acting as an agent? Like, there is some undercurrent of concern in the marketplace about that. So let's talk about that for a minute.
So as Tom said earlier, I'm dealing with the day-to-day operations of this market, and I'm having daily conversations with MSPs who just want their clients, whether it's a lawyer, doctors, accountants, dentists, all walks of life. I'm getting clients that they just want to basically just do an email introduction or just put me in touch with their clients because they have more than enough work to do on their own, and they just want someone to take care of their clients. And it's a great feeling for me when I can put have a contact with someone. Last week I just did an account out in California. She actually, I think I had a carrier was getting out of the market of CPA, cyber insurance for CPAs. I was able to put a policy in place for her, very quickly. The MSP was thrilled because he was like, I just kind of made the introduction, got out of the way, let it happen. I took care of the situation, got our policy. And so that's pretty much how it's been working on my end. And like I said, most of the time, the MSPs just want just like everyone else, you just want your client taken care of, whether it's, insurance or, the MSP, providing services to his clients. We all just want our clients to be taken care of in the end. So,
and there's two things with that. And what we found, sometimes we do reviews, we've helped MSPs win business. And again, I keep referencing our discussion before this began. I said to you, $1 million isn't $1 million anymore. So if an MSP is requiring their client to carry $1 million, right? There's sublimits now. So I'm insured for $1 million. There are these sublimits that for social engineering, guess what? I only have $100,000 of coverage. Extortion, I only have $50,000 of coverage. Invoice manipulation. So we look at some of these things. Insurance carriers are trying to cut their losses, right? They're cutting their losses in the areas that the most claims have been over the last 3 to 4 years. So you see that $1 million for liability, but let's look at the fine print. So there's been situations where Mike and I have gone in and just independently reviewed a policy and said, hey, you got to be aware of this. And it sort of helped win that business for the MSP. And that other point where we get with that, when they're dealing with the client that is with an Allstate, State Farm, Farmers Insurance, phenomenal carriers, right? Big, huge carriers for general business, but they don't understand or have as broad coverage in the most part, right? For cyber insurance, right? That's usually throwing, hey, we're going to throw in an extra 50 grand. So be very careful. And there are some carriers that just specialize in this, and that's what we deal with, that understand this market, understand the specific classification business that client is in, whether it's a pizza shop or dry cleaner. And sort of we can go through that, like, here's where your risk is. Here's where your exposure is. And a lot of times don't even understand, they think of breaches. We have, I'll go back to some of our doctors that say, well, I'm not worried about the breach because we're tied into the hospital's EMR. So we've had a client that lost access to their EMR for a month. So what the great thing about cyber insurance outside of that breach, guess what? There's business interruption, right? So you can't bill for a month, you just lost $50,000. That's what cyber insurance covers. So going over the different aspects of how that's relating to their business, that's what we get brought into.
So are MSPs talking about it at that level, or are they simply saying, hey, part of what we do as a value add is make sure that you've got all of the various areas covered, and I'd like to introduce you to one of our strategic partners? How does that conversation go on the front end?
It depends on the different MSP, right? So we work with any of the MSPs, because our motto is if they are growing, then we're growing with them. So we try to be an extension to what they're offering to their clients. So whether it's, hey, this client wants someone to look at it, can you please help me? Hey, we go in as an independent advisor and evaluate that. Or hey, this client needs this, they have no idea about cyber insurance, we do that. So it depends how they want to use. Sometimes it's a dual meeting with them, sometimes it's a live meeting, sometimes it's a Zoom meeting, sometimes we get an email. It's sort of getting that comfort level, because again, if you're trusting us with your client, we want you to be comfortable, right? And say, hey, Tom and Mike are great guys, but they just blew up my contract. We don't want to do that. And this is about trust and understanding.
So one thing that you mentioned backstage is that you're big on education, because a lot of businesses will say, I've got coverage already. And you were sharing some areas where there isn't, maybe there needs to be more overlap, or there needs to be, like you mentioned, business interruption insurance. Maybe they don't have that piece of the puzzle handled. And so you mentioned specifically like a prospect comes to you, a small business comes to you, and they think they've got all of the pieces taken care of. Like, yeah, we've got all of our bases covered, no big deal. And then you mentioned Hitchcock's. So tell me, I know that's one caution.
So two things we'll look at, and I'll hit about. So when we talk about Hitchcock's, sometimes when MSPs come to us, right, and say, hey, can you look at my insurance? I have everything covered. I have this policy I bought online from Hitchcock's, because we all see it. And actually, I'm probably talking about Hitchcock's now. So when I go into MSN today, I'm going to have an advertisement for them, which will be great, but no one's listening. But they think they don't know what they have. And when we look at it and analyze with Mike, hey, that Hitchcock's policy is your E&O. Doesn't include your cyber exposure, right? So many times, as their markets change, as MSPs are growing and contracts that they're maybe signing with a larger company is requiring them to cover E&O and cyber, hey, I don't really have it, right? So we go through that. That's on the MSP side. On their client side, when you look at a general policy, a business policy from an Allstate, right? And I'm not picking on them, just using an example. Oh, I see business interruption insurance. I have that. That's excluded from an electronic standpoint, from a cyber standpoint. So we try to educate, here's what this policy is, and this where coverage is. Here's where this policy applies, and this is your exposure. We have it. But again, trying to educate those MSPs as they're growing from smaller and growing and getting these contracts, getting more proceeds. Hey, you have to have the proper coverage. But now the market is dictating to them to say, hey, this client I contracted with, they're requiring to make sure I have that. Can I have a certificate showing that? I already have it. Guess what? You don't. So we go through that piece with them.
And I see the Hitchcock's policies fairly often, and a lot of times carriers are a little apprehensive about quoting stuff midterm unless someone is underinsured. And typically when I take that Hitchcock's piece to my underwriters, they're saying, well, they don't have cyber on this, they just have E&O on this policy, they want to add cyber so I can get a quote and get them into the correct coverage for the MSP market. Because I, like Tom was saying, or I said earlier, and one thing I hear from Tom often, and I try to stress as much as possible, the importance of for the MSPs, putting the E&O and cyber coverage together, because in the event something does go wrong, it won't turn into basically a finger pointing event between two carriers. So a lot of times Tom will say, hey, if we never speak again, try to put those two coverages together for your company. It'll benefit you in the long run for sure.
Yeah, I had a claim one time years ago at a hospital, right? And this has nothing to do with cyber or but it was a patient goes into a hospital to get blood work, sits in a plastic chair, right? Chair falls apart. They put a claim in. They came down, broke their wrist to cushion their fall, or in ER. So you say if a patient goes in the hospital, is that a malpractice claim? Is that a general liability claim? The chair fell apart. So after 90 days of the two different carriers arguing, it got paid under professional liability. There's no practice. There's no malpractice that happened, but the court ruled that the patient was coming for professional services. So that same thing applies to an MSP. You want to sort of maintain your relationship with your client. God forbid if something goes wrong, You want to take care of for you. You want to take care of for them because, hey, we're covered, we move on, and you maintain that relationship. It doesn't get strenuous because, hey, are you going to pay this claim? Or, hey, we have issues here. So again, we may not always have the lowest price. Most of the time we do, but we do tell them, put it together because you want it seamless.
And I like that. It takes away the finger pointing. I'm not going to cover that. Go ask your other carrier. And then that carrier.
Yeah, and you have lawyers contacting lawyers.
Yes.
So it's good.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all experienced this with let's say car insurance or homeowners insurance or that type of thing, where it could be something as simple as a very clear-cut accident, and insurance company A is saying it wasn't our fault, and insurance company B is like, well, it wasn't our fault either, and now nobody's paying, and the only person who's losing out
Are the insureds.
Right, exactly. The ones who are paying the premiums. So,
yep. So
awesome.
That's why you just sort of cover yourself because, again, the market's more evolving to that now, and that's what you need to do.
Okay, awesome. So that's where Inksyber comes in. Like, you are sourcing these insurance policies, you're educating, you're making sure that people know gaps. If they have gaps, let's at least reveal what those gaps are and have people, you know, be aware that they have a liability in place and potentially fix that liability by getting a policy to.
Absolutely. We get carriers that come to us, they're entering in the market. We have carriers just because we play in this space, understand what we do. Again, we're not a general insurance broker, right? We specialize in you know, Willow Risk is in professional lines. Inksyber is a subsidiary that is just tech, E&O, and cyber. So Mike gets calls from carriers, whether out of Bermuda, out of London, stateside, that sort of come to us because of our economies of scale, the book of business we have, and we know the space. So whether there's a new player coming in or there's a player in the market coming out because claims are so bad or they're not underwriting or they're not sitting there, they're not writing any new business or someone else coming in, we know that space very well.
So give me your website so I can drop it. I'll drop it in the description so that everybody can find you. I think I've got it, but let's double check.
It's just Inksyber.com, INSKYBER.com.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, so that would be again for MSPs who are wanting to make sure they've got all their T's crossed and I's dotted, as well as a great value add to clients and prospects to make sure that they're covered as well and they don't have any unknown liabilities.
Correct.
Okay.
And my email is mike@willowrisk.com, and I'm more than happy to. I have people or MSPs send me, you know, their policy. Hey, look this over. Tell me where, you know, if you have a suggestion on where I should add coverage, and then also they'll send me their clients' actual policies as well to review. And I'm more than happy. I love going through and reviewing people's policies, in particular with cyber insurance. So,
and there's an info spot for it there, and there should be stuff for their clients that should be up any day. But thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So last question, I'm looking at your conference table. You've got a bobblehead and a little hat. So I need to know about the bobblehead and the hat.
There's a couple bobbleheads.
This is Mike Schmidt, the greatest third baseman in the history of Major League Baseball.
And this is Roy Halladay, right? So the Phillies play today, and I will put this on. And I'm sorry for anyone from California, but we will beat the Padres today. This shows my big Polish head right here. It's not fitting.
That's a normal size helmet.
A normal size helmet. Don't Mike get the ice cream out of this.
All right, so that's your lucky hat. So
lucky hat, Philly, big win for the Phillies today.
All right, yes. You heard it here first, folks. So prediction of the win. I love it. Fantastic. I'm glad I asked. That's awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Again, it's amazing to me that we are in this place where insurance of all things is a very hot topic and really an opportunity for MSPs to add value, but also to make sure that their own businesses are safe and have the proper protections in place as things continue to evolve. So,
and again, I said it earlier, cyber insurance sells cybersecurity, because if you look at that application now, it is sort of detailing from a carrier what the client needs, and sort of the MSP's right there to say, hey, we have that. We talked about it. You don't want it, but now you need it.
Yes, I love it. All right, cybersecurity. Say that again. I want to put that in there.
Cyber insurance sells cybersecurity.
Love it. All right, hold on. Cyber insurance, which is great. I still am waiting for an MSP to create a whole campaign around. We will come in and help you answer your questionnaire. And oh, by the way, you've got some gaps here that I happen to be able to fill. So cyber insurance sells cybersecurity. Those are words of gold for the right person listening. So
Yes, awesome. Well,
amazing.
thank you.
Thank you again for your time. We will have to do this again real soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.